Aloha from Honolulu. Welcome to this hybrid webinar, which is part of the East-West Center Research Speaking Series. Topic for today is a new avenue for ROK-US, Republic of Korea, US climate change cooperation under the Indo-Pacific strategy toward the Pacific Islands. We're lucky to have as our speaker today, Kyoung Hae Kim, who is a career diplomat in the Republic of Korea Diplomatic Corps since 2008. She's been posted to Geneva and Colombia, among other places, and she's currently a visiting researcher at the East-West Center. We'll follow our usual format, which is we have an hour total. We'll have a lecture period, and then we'll have a question and answer period. For those who are in the room, you know how to ask a question. For those who are online, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a question and answer Q&A function button. Type on that button, it'll open a window. You type in your question there, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. We look forward to a good seminar and to good questions, and I'll turn the floor over to Kyoung Hae.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody online and here in this room, in person, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Kyoung Hae Kim, as introduced Danny, and I've been here at East-West Center as a visiting researcher for a year, and my term is nearing the end, and my days are counting down. Today, I am going to speak about Korea-US climate change cooperation in the Pacific Island under the framework of the two countries Indo-Pacific strategy. I know the title itself is long and incorporates multiple concepts such as climate change, Indo-Pacific strategy, ROK-US cooperation, and Pacific Island countries. So to start off, I'd like to spend some time explaining where this combination of concepts came from with my experience. First, let me tackle the first two items in the slide, which are Pacific Island countries, PICs, and climate change. Throughout my career, I've been involved in multilateral environmental diplomacy. When I was still a junior diplomat in 2013, I attended a preparatory session for the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, in New York, and I participated in discussions regarding sustainable ocean governance. And there I first witnessed Pacific Island countries' concerted effort advocating themselves in the meeting. And this experience left an indelible mark on me and inspired me to look into this region more closely. Moving on to the third item, the Indo-Pacific strategy, IPS, a comprehensive diplomatic approach to engage in this region. In recent years, this concept of Indo-Pacific gained significant traction among the diplomatic stage, and many countries, including Korea and the US, unveiled their own versions of IPS and positioned them as the center of their foreign policies. The Korean version was released in December 2022, and when I was working in Korea, I had a chance to look closely into the draft strategy. And I realized that the strategy is not only about geopolitics, as many people perceive, such as the US-China rivalry, however, but also about a meaningful approach to addressing climate change at a regional level. Finally, upon joining this East-West Center last year, I recognized the Institute's excellent, one-of-a-kind Pacific Island Development Program. And additionally, the center hosted a series of seminars on the Indo-Pacific in collaboration with the State Department and the institution's excellent in-house researchers. Therefore, it became evident that this environment provides me with an ideal platform to explore the interconnection of the trinity in this slide, namely climate change, Indo-Pacific strategy, and Pacific Island. Having set the stage, I'd like to revisit the title of my presentation. Now I hope this title is more digestible and makes sense to you. So basically, I would like to show you the possibility of ROK-US climate change cooperation in the Pacific Islands drawing from the two countries' respective Indo-Pacific strategy. This is the slide that encapsulates my research topic. So Korea, the USA, cooperation in PIC in terms of climate change. I think it's amazing how many words can be reduced to just one graphic. Since I think I made sure that we are on the same page, now I'd like to make transition into the presentation agenda. Okay, first, I will provide an overview of the climate change related component of the ROK and the US Indo-Pacific strategy. This will establish the rationale for discussing climate change cooperation within the Indo-Pacific framework. Following that, I will talk about the Pacific Island countries and climate change, providing the reason for this specific region of focus. In part 3, I will examine how this momentum of cooperation is building between Korea and the US, and as well as how they make connections with the Pacific Island region in part 4. I will do this by analyzing summit outcome documents and government issued papers of relevant meetings. Lastly, I will conclude with some policy recommendations based on analysis and future considerations. Let's start. The Indo-Pacific is a strategically important region for Korea. If you take a look at the diagram in the slide, the Indo-Pacific represents approximately 78% of Korea's total export, 67% of import, and 70% of its trading partners are located in this region, and 66% of its foreign direct investment is destined for the Indo-Pacific. This region is also home to many key strategic shipping routes, so therefore peace and stability in this region is crucial to Korea, whose foreign trade accounted for approximately 85% of its GDP in 2021. Korea unveiled its IPS Indo-Pacific strategy in December 2022. It is a comprehensive diplomatic strategy, and it aims to foster a free, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific. It is closely related to the concept of global pivotal state. We call it GPS, and it is the current Korean administration's diplomatic vision, which is usually described as fulfilling its broader roles and responsibilities in the international community. So, these are the 9 lines of effort that Korea's IPS illustrate. As you can see, it is very comprehensive and it encompasses like security, economics, science and technology, and global issues. What we are interested in this presentation are the items highlighted in red, titled Lead Regional Cooperation on Climate Change and Energy Security, and Engage in Contributive Diplomacy through Tailored Development Cooperation Partnerships. So let's take a closer look at what they say. These 2 lines of effort illustrate potential areas of cooperation, such as zero-emission vehicles, green shipping, climate resilience infrastructure development, methane emissions reduction, and clean energy. Additionally, Korea commits to practicing active contributive diplomacy in responding to climate change in the region. The term contributive diplomacy, I believe coined by the Korean government, generally means the willingness to contribute to the international community based on universal values such as freedom and peace. So I think it's in line with the previous term, global pivotal state. Moreover, regarding Pacific Island countries, the Korean government pledges to, and I quote, support the climate change response and low carbon energy transition of the PICs which are vulnerable to climate change through green ODA, unquote. Therefore, in summary, Korea's IPS clearly recognizes the importance of cooperation of climate change, demonstrating its willingness to contribute to this end. And it also shows its explicit interest in the Pacific Island region in this regard. Then now let's turn our attention to the US's Indo-Pacific strategy. The United States released its IPS in February 2022, 10 months earlier than Korea. And in fact, Korea's IPS is very much in line with that of the US, so you can see a lot of similarities. It aims for a free and open, connected, prosperous, secure, and resilient Indo-Pacific, and sounds familiar, right? And I also want to highlight that it stresses collaboration with allies and partners in achieving those goals. The phrase allies and partners appeared 23 times in the 18-page US IPS document, and yes, and I counted it. So I think it's fair to say that this is a point of emphasis. These are the 5 objectives that the US IPS puts forward. And as you can see, pretty comprehensive, encompassing like values, security, economic, and global issues, climate change related items, which this presentation and I am interested in, are under the 5th objective and highlighted in red, titled Build Regional Resilience to Transnational Threat. If we dig a little bit further, it identifies clean energy technology, infrastructure investment, and reducing climate vulnerability as potential areas of cooperation. Regarding PICs, the strategy outlines partnering to build resilience in the Pacific Island as one of its 10 core lines of effort, clearly expressing its interest in this region. So what do we know now? We have seen that both countries have climate change and PIC-related elements in their respective IBS. This leads to my observation that Korea's willingness to play a bigger role in the Indo-Pacific, combined with the US's call for the involvement of allies and partners, can lead to a promising foundation for collaboration in addressing climate change in the Pacific Islands. Now I would like to answer the question. Why does this research focus on the Pacific Island countries? First, as we have observed in previous slides, the PICs are one of the key areas of engagement under Korea and the US's IPS. When the two countries' IPS talk about development cooperation in Indo-Pacific, it usually refers to Southeast Asia and PICs as main partners. Second, for decades, countries like Australia and the US have been key players in this region. However, more recently, China's approach to the region has been notable, and numerous countries are paying renewed attention to this region's strategic significance. For example, as I will explain later, Korea and the US held the first ever summit meeting with countries in this region and launched region-specific policy papers. And also, you might remember or not, that President Biden was scheduled to visit Papua New Guinea last year, though it was canceled last minute due to a domestic issue. This would have been the first ever visit from a sitting US president to this region. Third, this region is among the most vulnerable in the world to climate change. They face existential threats from rising sea levels. Some of these countries' maximum elevation is no more than 3 to 5 meters, that is 10 to 16 feet above sea level. The small size and limited access to resources of these individual Pacific countries exacerbate the issue, so international collaboration to confront the challenge is needed. Lastly, I just want to highlight this cooperation on climate change is in line with the Pacific Island countries' own priorities. The 2050 Strategy for Blue Pacific Continent is a long-term development roadmap agreed upon and endorsed by Pacific Island countries in 2022, and climate change is high up on their agenda in this plan. Pacific Island leaders have declared that climate change is the single greatest threat to the livelihood, security, and well-being on the peoples of the Pacific. From now on, we are going to direct our attention to what actually happened since the inauguration of the Indo-Pacific strategy. In part 3, which is marked with blue, I will present the ROK-US summit and ROK-US Japan Trilateral Summit as evidence the momentum is building for climate change cooperation in PICs. In part 4, which is marked with yellow, I will bring the US PIC Summit and the ROK PIC Summit in order to highlight both countries' effort to make connections with the PICs. So first, the ROK-US Summit was held in April 2023, and it was the first summit since both countries had unveiled their respective IPSs. The year 2023 marked the 70th anniversary of the ROK-US alliance, so naturally they adopted a very comprehensive joint statement. I listed some items from the joint statement regarding climate change and PICs. I'm not going to highlight everything, but I want to bring two main points to your attention. First, it explicitly refers to climate change as one of the main items of cooperation in the context of IPS. Second, compared to previous statements, reference to the Pacific Island countries and climate change cooperation was more visible in the 2023 joint statement, and it provides additional emphasis by mentioning the specific initiatives or events. Overall, the outcome can be conceptualized as policy alignment between ROK and the US. Moreover, the implementation of follow-up measures support that the summit was not just a talk. For example, when the meeting was held, Korea was not a member of the Partners of Blue Pacific, PBP, a US-led initiative for Pacific development, but the ROK officially joined the PBP later in 2023. This March, Korea's foreign vice minister had a virtual meeting with the head of USAID, Samantha Power, and according to the press release, they agreed to strengthen bilateral collaboration by exploring a joint development project, and they emphasized a focus on regions of strategic importance, including Pacific Island countries. On the other side, expanding the ROK-US Japan Trilateral Cooperation is ranked highly on the US's IPS. This effort came to fruition with the first ever standalone trilateral summit held in Camp David in August 2023. Before this summit, the three countries had held a series of ad hoc meetings at the sidelines of other multilateral forums such as G20 or NATO, but not on the regular basis. Let me briefly explain what makes this summit significant in terms of my research and elements related to climate change and Pacific Island countries among the outcomes. These are climate change and PIC-related items in the joint statement. As you can see through, PICs and climate change are explicitly mentioned in the statement, and I would like to highlight the first bullet point. The three leaders announced that this summit opened a new era of trilateral partnership with qualitative changes. There are two major reasons to say that. First, there has been a notable expansion in the scope of the agenda. Prior trilateral cooperation primarily focused on security concerns, including responses to North Korea's provocations. However, in the Camp David summit, the three leaders committed to, quote, expand our cooperation to a new horizon across domains and across the Indo-Pacific and beyond, unquote, which of course include climate change. Second, this meeting institutionalized the trilateral cooperation. The leaders agreed to hold the summit annually and to create multi-level consultations among ministers and senior level officers in various ministries. For example, as you can see in the fourth bullet point, they agreed to initiate an annual Indo-Pacific dialogue. It will focus on coordinating the implementation of their respective Indo-Pacific approaches with a particular emphasis on the partnership with Southeast Asian and Pacific Island countries. They held the inaugural meeting this January. To summarize the essence of the Trilateral Summit for the purpose of my research, I would say that the summit has expanded agendas beyond security to encompass regional challenges, including climate change. Also, it promised a high level of institutionalization, offering the foundation for sustainable cooperation. Thus far, we have reviewed the growing momentum in climate change cooperation between Seoul and Washington. Meanwhile, the ROK and the US held first ever summit with PICs respectively. Moreover, in these summits, the two countries released detailed region-specific policies towards PICs. This in turn can render some useful insight for future cooperation between the ROK and the US. So first, in September 2022, the US hosted its first ever summit with the Pacific Island countries, unveiling its cooperation strategy titled Pacific Partnership Strategy. As you can see in the slide, the strategy lays out four main objectives. Climate change, which is the priority of the PICs, is of course one of them, and I highlighted in red. Let's look into the details of some climate change related elements under that objective. There is quite a comprehensive list of items, so for the sake of explanation, I grouped some of the recurring themes together. First, there are elements related to climate finance, such as improving PIC's access to adaptation finance, strengthening PIC's ability to mobilize climate finance, and assisting PICs in developing funding proposals. Second, in terms of information and science, the following items were included: expanding climate information services, facilitating related training, and producing useful forecast tools. Third, there was a mention of helping PICs to develop and finance climate resilient and adaptive infrastructure. Fourth, there was also a reference to supporting investment in renewable energy and clean transportation. Similar story, several months later, the Republic of Korea also hosted the first Korea-Pacific Island Summit in Seoul and released its first cooperation strategy and action plan for the region. The press release and the news coverage of this summit explicitly state that the primary purpose of this summit was to identify the intersection between Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy and the PIC's 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. This provides a summary of Korea's cooperation strategy for the Pacific Island countries. It has three themes: resilience, reinforcement, and revitalization. And we can see climate change-related items highlighted in red, such as strengthening climate resilience and resilience to disasters. Also, I would like to underscore that in this regional cooperation strategy, Korea provided a strong commitment for implementation. The Korean government committed to double its official development assistance, ODA, to the region by 2027, and mentioned that it will make use of Korea's concessional loans to improve infrastructure in the region. Again, for the sake of this presentation, I grouped and simplified what the strategy mentioned about climate change. And you can always go back to the original policy paper online to see it in more detail. The action plan lists items such as capacity building for greenhouse gas inventory to start. It also refers to enhancing climate prediction services by improving the climate prediction tool, offering training programs, and expanding the scope of services. Moreover, it mentioned forest cooperation. This section includes promoting mangrove tree planting project and supporting income generating projects using forest. Last but not least, he mentions green energy supply. Now that we have more complete picture, let's dive into the concluding section. Up until now, I showed you that number one, there is building momentum in climate cooperation for PIC between the ROK and the US under their respective Indo-Pacific strategy. And number two, the ROK and the US made connections to PIC by hosting a summit with PICs respectively. Before going into the policy recommendation, I think it would be useful to do a quick evaluation of the challenges and opportunities that the US and ROK respectively face. I believe this can further highlight the significance or the need for this ROK-US cooperation. So first, talking about US, since the US has always had a presence in the Pacific region, its rich experience of cooperation and institutional networks in the region can serve as a strong foundation for its partnership with the Pacific region. Also, historically, there have been many people-to-people exchanges between the US and the PICs. On the other hand, the US legacy, such as enduring impact of nuclear tests in the past, is a historical baggage that the US bears in this region. Also, more importantly, there are some concerns that framing of the US's renewed Pacific focus in the context of strategic competition with China can hamper the US's ability to develop credible relationships with the region. Turning to the ROK, on the positive side, Korea has a clean history with them. Korea is willing to empower the partnership with the region. And also as a classic example of a developing country turned into a developed country, the ROK can position itself as a more relatable and credible partner for the PICs. However, compared to other major players, including the US, Australia, Japan, and France, Korea seems like a latecomer in the already crowded Pacific with its less extensive record of cooperation. Moreover, the resources that the country can allocate to the PICs are limited. Even though the ROK announced that it would double the ODA for the Pacific region, the current amount is no more than $20 million. In summary, I think this evaluation sheet shows the ROK and the US have a set of complementary strengths and weaknesses, making each other an attractive partner. With everything that I presented so far in mind, I have come up with some policy recommendations for ROK-US cooperation on climate change in the Pacific Island region. The recommendation comprises two components. The first focuses on the potential platform for coordination, and the second explores possible areas for initiating cooperation. First, when it comes to coordinating platform, it is important to maximize efficiency and minimize redundancy. In this regard, it is given that the ROK and the US should leverage existing bilateral channels to forge the collaboration. Second, it is desirable to make use of the Partners in the Blue Pacific, PBP, a relatively new US-initiated platform launched in 2002 as an inclusive and informal mechanism. Although the ROK was not among the founders of the PPP, now it is a member. And since it is an informal and flexible mechanism, I think it is easier for Korea and US to come up with joint actions in the PPP. For example, the two countries can echo each other's voices to channel more resources of PPP for climate change, or more desirably, develop a new joint flagship initiative within this platform. Also, as previously discussed, the prospects for cooperation within the ROK-US-Japan trilateral framework can be promising with its growing level of institutionalization. This trilateral platform can reinforce the ROK-US bilateral collaboration and vice versa. For example, when we have a trilateral meeting of any kind, we don't just gather and have one ROK-US-Japan meeting and go home. It naturally have ROK-US consultations on a given topic to take place, and thus providing more chances for bilateral exchanges. An example of this is the first trilateral development and humanitarian assistance policy dialogue in October 2023 held in Hawaii. The three countries focused on aligning priorities and policies in international development and humanitarian challenges. There were also agendas regarding PICs and climate change, and Director General level of officers in foreign ministries and implementing bodies like USA and COICA participated in this meeting. I believe these are evidentiary of a progress or a concrete outcome. Now I will turn to the second part of the policy recommendations, the areas of priorities. I came up with this recommendation by analyzing and comparing climate change related items in both countries' regional strategies toward the Pacific Island, which we reviewed earlier. There are many possibilities, but I propose disaster risk reduction, resilient infrastructure, and climate finance. It is notable that both countries have already allocated resources to enhance the region's capabilities to reduce potential disaster risks. The ROK has played an active role in developing the Pacific Targeted Climate Prediction Tool, and now is committed to improving the tool and offering training programs to working level climate officers in PICs. Similarly, the US has been strengthening early warning systems in the area with USAID. Consequently, mutual collaboration in this field, based on each country's prior commitment, can serve as a starting point for the development of joint projects in the near future. Moreover, the two countries can consider a collaboration in building resilient infrastructure in the Pacific Island region. Notably, the US has experience in forging the US-Japan-Australia partnership to finance construction of a digital cable in Palau, and Korea has also been involved in clean energy-related projects in this region. So given Korea's expressed intention to provide highly concessional loans to the region's infrastructure, ROK-US joint initiative for climate resilient infrastructure can be investigated further. Lastly, I believe climate finance is also a promising area of cooperation. We've seen that the US's strategy toward this region emphasizes support for PIC's access to climate financing. This is also PIC's standing request. And Korea is the home of the Green Climate Fund, GCF, the world's largest climate fund. Also, Korea houses an international organization named the Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI, which is known for its experience in support for developing GCF funding proposals. Therefore, the possibility of having some capacity building activities in Korea can be explored. Given what we have seen so far, I believe the ROK and the US's IPS opened a new avenues of climate change cooperation. Since the two countries are good complementary partners in the Pacific region, I believe they should harness this opportunity to serve the objectives of their IPSs more effectively. However, as always, there are still a few things to consider. First, to forge a reliable partnership with PICs on climate change, it remains to be seen how this collaboration will influence the two countries' respective stances on PIC-related issues at the annual UN Climate Conference, COP. So there are some issues that the PICs are particularly interested in, including the loss and damage fund and developed countries' ambitious mitigation target. If Korea and the US can show a progressive stance in these issues, it will give a positive effect on the partnership with the PICs. Second, it is important to have a robust consultation with PICs for an effective execution of collaboration. It is notable that the US announced that it will hold US PIC summit biannually on a regular basis, and Korea also reaffirmed that it will hold foreign ministers meeting biannually. So I hope this trend will continue. Finally, when the cooperation between Korea and the US becomes more substantial, we might be able to explore more diverse coalitions in the Pacific Island region. Because with respect to cooperation on climate change, alignment and effectiveness always go hand in hand. And thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you, Kyoung Hae, for an excellent presentation. We now have about 20, 25 minutes for question and answer. Need a red one. Thanks to Kyoung Hae for an excellent presentation. We now have at least 20 minutes for question and answer. I want to particularly invite the folks who are online to ask questions. Right now, there's no waiting time. Again, for those online, you click on the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen and type in your question. For those in the room, please don't make the mistake I just did. If you want to ask a question, get close to your microphone and make sure you got red lights showing, not green lights. So I think Amanda has questions, so we'll start there.
Dive in while everybody online. So I'm Amanda Ellis, adjunct senior fellow here at the Centre and previously ran New Zealand Development Agency, NZAID. And I thought this was such a great presentation. Thank you very much. So, oops, do I need to say that again?
Yeah.
Say it again, or we're working?
We'd have to ask the audience.
Hi, excellent presentation. I'm Amanda Ellis, a senior fellow here, adjunct at the East West Centre, and previously ran New Zealand Development Agency. This was an excellent presentation, and I had a couple of observations and a couple of questions. So first of all, I think Korea has a very special status as a country, as really one of the poorest countries in the world in the 1950s, that was then the first to transition into an OECD member country. I was working at the OECD at the time. It was very exciting, and to provide development assistance. So I wondered if in your research you had done any further investigation into a partnership that was US, New Zealand, Australia, Korea back in 2011 with the EU as well, and that looked at a target of 50% renewable energy in the Pacific Islands by 2050. We didn't make it, but it'd be interesting just to build on that background. I also wanted to let everybody know that there's work going on here already at the East West Centre with Pacific Islands in the transition to 100% renewable energy, funded by Blue Planet Alliance, Hank Rogers, and the CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff. And the first one was held last October with Palau, Tonga, a number of the Guam, a number of the US affiliated territories. And then coming up from the 5th to the 10th of May, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, and Samoa will be among the 10 islands, a number from the Caribbean as well. But that is a really interesting process that I think perhaps given Hawaii is in a perfect position to be a bridge, we could involve Korean consulate and obviously Australia and New Zealand as well. But very interesting to see, we will have a representative from the Green Climate Fund, Brad Punu from NUE, who's the acting chief financial officer, and he'll be presenting for that bridge to finance. So I think your research could really be put into action in partnership with the centre and the work that is already going on here every 6 months. I had a question about your perspective. What do you think will happen if the US strategy on climate changes after the elections?
Mhm.
The US has made remarkable progress. It's now only 14% of global emissions.
Mhm.
And China, of course, has gone up to 30%. And you
Mhm.
made a very interesting point about how that is seen
Mhm.
by the Pacific Islands in the
Mhm.
context of the UNFCCC
Mhm.
and COP.
Mhm.
So I love your perspective on that.
Mhm.
And then my last question would be, when you mentioned areas of collaboration, you didn't mention marine protected areas.
Mhm.
And we know, for example, that Kiribati recently reversed its marine protected area at China's request, and China is now able to fish in that area, given that there's been a global commitment to preserve 30% of biodiversity, land and sea of area, and also around biodiversity. Do you think that that could be a potential area of development assistance, collaboration, and cooperation? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that you have enlightened your experience and your knowledge of the event, as well as the possibility of a little bit, larger, coalition. In my presentation, I kind of focused on US-Korea cooperation for PICs on climate change. However, it is not limited to that bilateral collaboration, of course, because it does not like exclude having more people like on board. So I think you have a very, very valid point, and I'm glad to know that we are going to the same direction. And also, what was about the U.S. election and UNFCCC. Yes, as I highlighted in the further consideration, it is a big problem. I mean, everyone I talk to has concerns about the ominous like coincidence of U.S. election and the this year's COP meeting in Azerbaijan, Baku. So yeah, it will affect the credibility of US's credibility of the partnership with PICs, I guess, unfortunately. But as far as I'm concerned, there is no way to predict the way, and there is no way to, I don't know, if prevent the kind of like a setting a little bit lower ambition, showing a lower ambition in UN COP setting. But we can still continue to have a concrete project going in PIC with collaboration with US, Korea, or in the partnership PBP setting. Yeah. And lastly, about marine protected area, yes, I think it is good areas of cooperation. The reason that I don't have that on my slide is that I kind of think there were like already like too many items directly like related to climate change, such as energy transition and infrastructure building. So I kind of didn't include. However, I think it is a very good area to start with. And I think I am very sure that that is a definitely top agenda of the PIC countries in themselves. Yeah.
Question from online. You mentioned Australia is a newcomer, but Australia is very close to the Pacific Islands. And Australia has its own foreign policy and economic relations with China.
Yeah.
How will this impact Indo-Pacific security, particularly from Korea's perspective?
Okay, first of all, I didn't mention Australia as a newcomer to the region. If I did, maybe it was a slip of the tongue, and excuse my English. So I really like Australia. I know that Australia has played a very big role in this region. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced anything. Yeah. And then having said that, about like security issues concerning Australia, I guess I know that Australia is playing a lot of activities in terms of PVP, but as well as in forms of Quad. So I think that is worth mentioning because they are doing a lot of like security related activities such as marine like searching and making like maritime, how can I say, borders secure. And yes, what is the what was the question? Like Korea? Well, Australia and Korea are good friends. And we are, I think we basically are in the same direction. We are in line with in every policy, like concerning the security in the Pacific Island or more larger in terms of, you know, Indo-Pacific. Yeah.
Let me ask you a kind of a contrarian question.
Okay.
Maybe I'm a member of the political opposition in Korea, and
Mhm.
the government adopts your proposals, and I want to question it because
Okay.
I generally want to disagree with the ruling government. So one argument I might make
Mhm.
would be that it may be a good idea for the Republic of Korea to carry out projects that would assist the Pacific Islands
Mhm.
to adapt to climate change. We could either do that on our own, or we could do it with the United States.
Mhm.
So you're proposing that we do it with the United States as a
Yes.
partnership, but
Mhm.
wouldn't it be better for us to do it on our own? Because
Mhm.
Korea's agenda and United States agenda will not perfectly align.
Mhm.
There'd be some things the Americans would want us to do that we
Mhm.
don't want to do.
Mhm.
And maybe we could even get more credit doing it our way,
Mhm.
independently of the United States. Why wouldn't that approach, doing it our way without partnering with the United States, be better?
Thank you. Thank you for asking the contrary like question. And for that question, I maybe want to go back to the slide that I had, like opportunities and challenges. To be honest, like Korea doesn't have enough resources or networks in the Pacific Island countries. For example, we had only 1 or 2 embassies there, and it is not enough to cover all the areas of different Micronesia and what is it called? All the area, Melanesia and so on. So we are definitely better when we work together. I think I can say that definitely, yeah.
May I add a question? Because there are many persons, why Korea climate change? So something like that, because it means that why Korea proposed the climate change issue as their own foreign policy agenda, something like that. So can you let me know, let us explain what the Korea has the strengths in the field of the climate change, because you mentioned about the GCF and GGI or something like that, some headquarters located in Seoul, Korea. So can you explain a little bit about what is the strengthening point of the Korea in terms of the climate change issues? Yeah.
First of all, I can respond to your question that we have willingness to do more to that end. I mean, I want to go back to the discussion about global pivotal state and our diplomatic like vision to be a more responsible member of in the international community. In that sense, Korea is pushing forward to be a more climate change friendly country in the international community, and that could be a one response. And I also want to highlight that we are not a developed, past developed country who has a responsibility under the Kyoto Protocol, but we are developed country, and we can in the climate conference negotiation setting, we are in the high ambition group, which is like a bridging between the developing countries and developed country. So that is our, I don't know, at least objective in climate policy.
Question from online. Could you please comment on shipping and trade considerations?
shipping and trade consideration. Oh, yes, of course. That was in the discourse of explaining the importance of Indo-Pacific to Korea. So as I referred a statistic, Korea is a very dependent to trade. So securing is important shipping route in this region, not only Pacific Island countries, but also like in the whole Indo-Pacific is very important. And then, as I said, like 80%, 85% of our GDP was reliant to trade in 2021. So it is a very crucial problem or issue to Korea, which basically imports all the energies from outside.
Please turn on your microphone, make sure the red light's.
Thank you. I had a question that might be a little bit unusual. Could you speak to the issue of induced seismicity?
Could you repeat? Induced
Seismicity.
seismicity.
Maybe explain.
The ability, we're on a plate tectonics. We're in
Uh-huh.
the Pacific on both as Hawaii, and I'm wondering, is there any country that has the ability technologically to induce seismicity? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh.
if so, do we have some kind of pact related to that? Because the outcome would infect us with a tsunami or whatever. Do we have agreements
Mhm.
with that? And Indonesia, we're in the firewall and all those kinds of things. So
Okay.
I was just wondering.
Okay, seismic. Okay, I got you. Sorry. Unfortunately, I'm not a climate scientist, so I don't have exact knowledge on that. But I can tell you is that we are very much concerned or very much willing to support Pacific Island countries developing like early warning system for disaster risk reduction. So there has been a lot done to the end, and we want to expand that node of cooperation, and it is, according to my research, as one of the priority areas that we can push forward in the Pacific Island countries. Yeah, I think that is a very important and valid point. Yeah.
As you know, yesterday's Korean general election and with a big victory of opposition party. So opposition party, Democratic Party
Mhm.
owns more than half of the all seats.
Mhm.
So what do you think the influence of the Korean general elections, the result
Okay.
in terms of the
Mhm.
topic you present?
Mhm. That's a very good question. There are two sides, I guess. One side is just a climate policy. I don't think there might be a lot. I don't think there will be a lot of differences among like current administration or opposition party in terms of climate change, because we have the law that we have targeted a certain amount of reduction or to achieve the carbon neutrality. So I don't think it will make a lot of difference in climate change front. However, it might affect a little bit more on Korea, US, Japan trilateral front. But yeah, it remains to be seen. Yeah, but it is definitely a things to consider in the future. Yeah.
Question from the virtual audience. There's a danger for the United States and Korea and maybe other US friends and partners in assisting the Pacific Islands, but doing so with while making the impression that they're not authentically interested in the well-being of the Pacific Islands, but are reacting to the fear of increased Chinese influence. So if the United States and Korea partner, as you suggest, how can they do it in such a way as to prevent the rise of this kind of suspicion?
Yeah, that's very interesting question, because anytime I try to avoid the kind of US-China competition in Pacific Island, it always come back to that question. I believe the difference or the strengths we or Korea and US can have against China is that we are definitely in line with Pacific Island priority. In the regional policy paper, we heavily induced elements from the Pacific Island countries' own development plan. However, in terms of, China, I saw a statistics published by Lowy Institute that when it comes to climate change, China hasn't spent that much to that end, even though the climate change is the most existential issue in Pacific. So in that question, I should answer that we are different in the sense we can differentiate ourselves in the sense that we can go with Pacific Island countries' priorities.
Thank you for your presentation, Midori Akamine. This is a good follow-on question, I think. Appreciate that the ROK is looking into the priorities of the Pacific Island countries. I would like to know a little bit more about how they collaborate with the countries. Is it with the PIF? Is it separately?
Yeah.
And how are the priorities decided?
Okay.
Thank you.
I can answer the question with two things. First, how we collaborate with Pacific Island countries. Yes, we collaborate with Pacific Island Forum because they have already established a forum which is very representative and very advocating their interest. And second, I forgot what I wanted to say. But how? Yeah. But I think that's enough. We are collaborating with PIF. Okay, we are collaborating with PIF. We have set up, regular consultations already built in between PIF and Korea. So we have regular consultation, like a minister level biannually, senior official level annually. So that is the main platform we are collaborating with.
Fortunately, we've run out of time. If we didn't get to your question, I apologize. You can come to one of our future seminars and try again. Please join me in showing appreciation for our speaker today. Also, please consider attending our next webinar, which will be Monday, April 22nd at 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. The topic will be Emerging Deforestation-Free Regulatory Frameworks, US and Trade in the Asia-Pacific Region. Speaker will be Dr. Krzysztof Obydzinski, who is a forest legality and sustainability specialist with over 20 years of professional experience in the Asia-Pacific region. Until then, ahui ho.